Your state of your being will create the story. When I feel rested and connected and safe, guess what? The stories about my lovely husband will sound like, look at him. I'm so happy I have chosen him for a partner. He's so caring. He really connects with me through music, through interests. Like, I love doing life with him. The story is so much different. So welcome to Deeply Connected with your host, Ludmila. And let's talk about how stress is killing our relationships. By the way, if you think you can outwork yourself out of stress, let me know how it goes for you. Stress is just a part of our life, and we need to realize that all of us live under a lot of stress. And there are ways to work with stress. There are ways to kind of lessen your stress in your life, but stress is not going anywhere. Now, what can we do about that, especially in the relationships? So this is what I see often. I have a client come in and she says, my husband is so stressed out, or I am so stressed out, and it's just overwhelming, and I don't know what to do about this. It feels like there is never enough time. We are running like hamsters, both of us, and we are running, and there is never end goal. And no matter what we do, there is always something that needs our attention. And because we have and fulfill so many roles in our lives, we need to be so mindful, where do we focus our attention? So wherever you focus your attention, that's where you're going to create something, or you will experience a lot of stress, right? So don't believe anything or anyone that says when you remove stress, that's where your life will become better. The answer is to learn how to manage your stress and how to work with stress. And yes, how to have more boundaries, how to communicate better, how to really be more intentional about what you say yes to, while you navigate your everyday responsibilities, relationships, and just life in general. So I thought, when I started working with my own coach for the first time ever in my life, it was around 7 years ago, I thought, wow, I'm sure after this work, my life will be so peaceful and all the problems will be solved for. And I won't be challenged anymore because I'm doing this work. And then quickly I realized that the work, meaning, was not to really finish and get rid of all the stress in my life, but the work was really to understand, recognize where the stress is coming from, also admitting when I'm way too stressed out and I need some space, and then creating some support, creating habits and creating tools that can help me when I'm feeling completely overwhelmed. And we don't see really how stress, we see it in a divorce rates, but we don't really see on everyday life how stress really damages the relationships. Because if I am stressed out and then I come home and then I'm with my partner and I don't know how to manage this energy of being frantic and being constantly anxious, my partner, my kids, whoever is around me, or even, your work colleagues or your employees, they will pick up on your energy. What happens in intimate relationships is that for a lot of women, we try to fix, meaning we see our husband overwhelmed, or we see our husband in the anxious state, let's say, and we try to make it better for him. So we find ways of how to make life easier for him, right? Because when we see a person that we love and care about in a very overwhelmed state, we want to do whatever it takes to fix it and make it better. But when we take on more of their stress and when we take on more of responsibilities, we then become overwhelmed easily and frantic. And so we kind of try to fix for it by controlling things and controlling other people, instead of finding ways of how to self-regulate, co-regulate, and have conversations that can help us really come to terms and agreements how we can support each other. So if you experience a lot of stress, and you can feel it by having a lot of anxiety in your chest. I hear it often with my clients that they feel like their chest is very heavy, like there is this unsettled energy, or in their stomach, and it just feels like they cannot take a breath, because if they take a breath, they are falling behind. And this constant need for completing things and never-ending list, it's really preventing them from just sitting with themselves and recognizing, okay, how have I created this? And I've experienced that in my own business as well. At some point in my business, I started to do so much and taking on so many people, because I want to help as many people as possible, without recognizing or setting boundaries. When do I end and start my workday, and how does it combine with my family and my husband traveling, that I almost ended up completely burned out. And I woke up one day and my energy was depleted, and I felt this lack of motivation, and I had no idea what was going on some level. But I'm smart enough to understand that if something is happening, that I need to take a moment and reach out to my own support, or have time with myself and recognize literally what I've created, because nobody else created that but myself. And so when we find ourselves in those moments when we think it is all too much, and it's like every day is too much, and then it can also show up in your sleep, where you are sleepless, you have insomnia, it's very hard to just regulate. If you are issues with sleeping and falling asleep, it means that you are constantly in fight flight. So every conversation, every disagreement, when you are in constant stress, will most likely end up in a way you are trying to prevent, right? Also, if we are in this fight-flight state, our brain is really great at finding everything that is wrong with our partner, right? So your partner can be the best person ever, but when you are in fight-flight, your brain will look for, he doesn't care, he's not doing enough of this for me, he's not helping out with the children, I wish there was somebody that would be more thoughtful. The narrative of your brain, primitive brain, in the flight-fight state is very different than if your brain has access to the prefrontal thinking and the logical thinking. So not only is the stress itself creating, your response to stress is creating different behaviors, but it also creates different stories. So I need you to understand that your state influences the story, right? Because very often we hear, change your mindset, think positive thoughts. And I don't say there's anything wrong with that, but we need to understand that when you are in fight flight, you don't have access to prefrontal cortex. When you are in fight flight, your body prepares to fight. And when I'm fighting, my primitive brain will find all the dangers that are around me to protect myself from. So if I have to protect myself, I will find so many thoughts that are unsupportive around my partner. What a jerk. He didn't think about this. He didn't think that I needed more help. Or, for example, it happened to me even last week when we were dealing with a six-year-old and I was getting up at night. And my lovely husband made a comment, bless his heart, that was meant in the best way possible. But because I was already depleted, my brain and my reaction wasn't very, very kind or very nice. And I own that, I own that, because we are all human and we don't do it perfectly. We don't do anything perfectly in our life. And if you are trying to do it perfectly, you are going to create even more stress for yourself. So your state of your being will create the story. When I feel rested and connected and safe, guess what? The stories about my lovely husband will sound like, look at him. I'm so happy I have chosen him for a partner. He's so caring. He really connects with me through music, through interests. Like, I love doing life with him. The story is so much different. So when we look at stress, I would say it's one of the major reasons for divorce, because over time, if you are together 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, and you don't address the stress or how we are coping or avoiding stress or dealing with it, it's just one day, everything becomes too much and we are pretty much done. And one thing to say here is that a lot of couples are, or even individuals, if you are dating, because if you are dating and you are in a completely stressed out state, guess how it's going to influence your dating experience. But a lot of people in relationships are looking for help way too late down the road. So I want you to think about this. When you get married, you spend time, money, energy, focus, everything on this one amazing day. And then the question is, how much time, energy, focus, and money do you spend on resources to help you have great connection and great marriage? Not many people do that. What I see most of the time is when it really becomes unbearable, then you are trying to look for help. But what it means that for 5, 7, 10, 15 years, you've been living through stories that are created through stress responses. Okay, so the health of your relationship is not really measured by the time spent together. It is really measured by how well do we know each other, how well do we work with each other, and how open can we be about what is working and what is not working. So, for example, let's say I have a couple and the woman says, Ludmila, we've been married for 15 years. Like, he should already know what I need from him, what would be supportive of me, how he can really release a lot of weight and responsibilities from me. And I need him to communicate. He already should know how to communicate with me. And so when I asked more questions, I say, okay, so let me know, how have you been dealing with this lack of communication, with this lack of understanding in some ways, because your partner is great, but there is something missing. There is a gap, correct? And I want you to see that in many relationships, the gap can be overcome just through clarity on communication and stress management. Yeah. And when I ask this question, very often the answer is, well, I did not. I just adapted, meaning there is this gap. So I adapt how to live with that gap. So I don't communicate. I communicate, but only on a certain level. I don't open up much. I just learn how to deal with lack of whatever is missing. And then at some point you burn yourself down and you say, I'm done with the relationship, right? Like I'm really thinking about divorce. And the question is, well, that's really great. What have you done to really make this relationship to be nurtured and to thrive? Well, we've been together for 15 years or 10 years, whatever that is for you, right? Being together doesn't mean you are working together, growing together, and deeply connecting with each other. So understanding your own blind spots, that's why it is so important, and I talked about this in the season 1, so important to understand your family of origin and your blind spots in yourself, as how do I deal with stress? For example, if your parents were yelling a lot and there are emotional roller coasters in the household, very often you might be having the same responses. So every time there is tension, you might become emotionally reactive, right? If you are used to living in a household where there was no conversation about difficult subjects, you will be doing the same, most likely. You have learned to just sweep everything under the rug. And so now imagine that you are married and you don't talk about things, and your partner is, this so-called emotional person, meaning emotionally dysregulated because the nervous system needs to regulate, individual. So now imagine this dynamic. You shut down and she or he explodes emotionally and needs to talk about everything. Well, we will think there is a problem with the couple, but really what the root cause of this challenge in the relationship is both of you lack, first of all, a nervous system healing, right? Nervous system regulation, also understanding of your own patterns. And when you lack that, you can be together for 10 years. And then after 10 years, you decide to divorce. The question is, what is happening here? Is this really the relationship, or is this a lack of skills and lack of understanding? So we will be challenged with things, especially when you become parents, having children, them being sick. Like I said, we both work, me and my husband, we both work. And I think many of you work, both parties work as well. So where your kids are sick, you need to adjust. There is no choice. It's not like you can clock out and say, I am off the clock. I am not dealing with this. You will have to go to work and then deal with sick children, and then deal with parents who are becoming older and older and they need your support. So the amount of stress might not be dissipating, but how you approach it, how you think about stress, how you think this is normal, or is it too much, or I cannot handle it, your capacity for navigating that by yourself, but also with the people around you and in your partnership will make your relationship successful or not. Because again, if you are stressed out and overwhelmed and your partner is coming with bits for connection, you won't even see that. And over time, again, it creates this connection of not us together, but us separately, almost against each other. And I hear this a lot, and it's very normal. I want you to understand that being around people and with people can be challenging. It's all of us have our own quirky behaviors, and what might have seemed maybe, attractive in the beginning can drive you nuts 10 years into the relationship, right? If you were looking for somebody who is calm, who is not as outgoing because you are the outgoing party, and now you are 10 years in and it starts to drive you crazy because, you want this person to be just like you. This is a sign that it's something within you. There is some kind of a stress that is not being released and you are hyper focusing on the other person. I don't say that, this is not a problem sometimes for couples. It really depends. It's very individual, but consider really recognizing all the areas in your life, your job, your kids, if you have some, your boss, your company, your employees, if you run a business, your extended family, your other, if you have animals, your other, demands of life, all the areas of your life, and really rate yourself, how much stress are you experiencing in all of them? And where are the demands coming from? Because sometimes the demands are there and they're real, and sometimes we create those demands by ourselves because we want to be so helpful. So if you had to recognize, where can I, first of all, reduce the amount of stress coming in that is created in my life? Really edit and notice, make some notes and start making adjustments, right? For example, what we did with my husband, we used to go to all the birthday parties. If our kids were invited, we would just go. We wouldn't even think about if this is what we want to do this weekend, if this is something that adds to the quality of our life that we want to have, how does that make us feel? We would just say yes to every birthday party invitation because we love our kids and we want them to be happy and connect with people. But at some point we realized that every weekend of doing so was taking away and adding more stress because we would do things that not always brought us joy and took away our own time to kind of take care of ourselves after the whole week of work. So when you say yes to something and no to something else, really check, how am I saying yes to things that create more pressure for me instead of things that sometimes can really alleviate the demands, right? So instead of going to the birthday parties, maybe you go and take a massage. Maybe you just go for a walk and be outside by yourself. Just finding ways of really removing what is not for you and it's creating stress, right? Then some stress, as you know, with kids, when they get sick, how much influence do you have on that? Not much. And if your partner had a really stressful day at work or in his business, how much influence do you have on that? Not much. Now, this is where you step in and recognize, what do I do and who do I become when I see my kids or my partner not in a good mood, where I see their emotions being hurt? What do I do? Do I take it on again and I try to be the savior and the martyr and let me fix it all? And do I carry their stress on top of my own? Because if you do, this is an opportunity for you to kind of be more interdependent than codependent with the people in your life, and understand that everybody has the ability to process their emotions and their stress, right? And we all have different ways of doing so, but just understanding that my kids can be sick and my kids can be angry and frustrated, but it doesn't mean that I have to join them on this emotional roller coaster of anger. What it means is I need to be able to be this solid calming space, and it helps them to calm down, but also it doesn't take me on a trip with them, right? And as I said, it's not always done perfectly because some days you will take the bite and you will go on the trip. But the same goes to your partner. Where are the ways I see with my husband when I see him, working hard and some days, as I say, are less stressful and everything goes more smoothly and it seems like the mood is there, but some days are not like that, just like normal life. I have learned literally to just step away, ask if he needs anything, and remove myself to do what I need to do. And if he needs me, he will find me because he knows I am there for him. But I am not taking on. I don't feel like I'm responsible, So this is where I encourage you to see where I feel responsible for making him or my kids or anybody else to feel more positive about their own day and experience. So important to understand, it's not the amount of stress that is making your life more fulfilling or more connected. It's how you navigate stress and how you are proactive in strategies and how do you communicate with your significant other. I remember when our kids were younger, I used to get really activated and I almost felt like I'm going to lose my mind. Okay, do you know, like when they yell and jump off the walls and it's 4 p.m. on Saturday and you feel, when is this day over? Just a situation like that. I have learned that I need to be able to go into the separate room with my headphones on and listen to meditation and do breath work for 15 minutes so I can come back in a regular state, more of peaceful and connected, instead of just yelling at them and screaming, like there is no tomorrow. So that was one of my strategies. The second strategy for me was around that, and I'm just sharing because I know if you have kids, you can be struggling with this. And how you respond to your kids will influence how you navigate your marriage, and are you becoming more together or more kind of going separate ways, right? Because stress with children also major in navigating emotional and sexual intimacy. So I already know what my children need, meaning how much movement they need, how do they behave when they wake up. And so I know we need movement in our life, otherwise it becomes a problem. So being strategic about things like that. If I don't want to do it, and if you can have some help from your family, if not, you just hire somebody if you can afford that, because that's what I'm doing. Even when I'm home sometimes and I want to be by myself or with my husband and do a little bit more work, I will have somebody come for 3-4 hours so the kids can run around, be with them, and I can literally focus on myself and how to support my own mental, emotional well-being so I don't become a crazy person. The demands of the modern life are there. The demands are there. We are pulled in so many directions. So what have you noticed in your own family of origin? How do people handle stress? Then secondly, how have you been handling stress so far in your life? Because what I see a lot of times, we try to pretend nothing is happening. We try to pretend I'm not stressed out. And what I see a lot of us doing is, if I'm stressed out, it means I have to do more. No, if you are stressed out, what it means, you need to step back a little bit more, slow down, regulate, and then figure it out what is the next step and which of the things that I'm already doing I still keep choosing or not. So still evaluating, we're still doing things, but calming down first, regulating first, instead of just piling up, more and more things to do so you can feel less stressed out. That makes no sense. And I know you're experiencing this because my clients, they work sometimes 18 hours a day, literally for some periods and seasons in their business and careers. And the amount of work that they do is not releasing the stress. So working with that, understanding your patterns in how we relate to stress. And is it something, we think like, you can live a stress-free life. That's literally impossible. Your nervous system will respond to some things. You can create, as I say, boundaries and support and being more intentional about how I use my time and what I say yes or no to. But mostly it's really recognizing that we will be activated sometimes, that some days will be more challenging and more demanding. And how do we engage with those sensations of anxiety or stress that come up in our body when we feel so? And as we are navigating that in ourselves, how can we have those conversations with our partner? Because we can recognize this is where you are anxious, or this is where you need support, or this is where you are, overstretched kind of, and how can I come in and support you? Or how can I just hold space for you when you support yourself? So different ways and approaches. But this is the main lesson for you. Learn how to relate to stress, learn how to recognize which situations cause more stress within you, learn how you kind of relating to yourself and your feelings creates or lessens the stress, and go more inwards, get the support you need, and start to have the conversation as a family how you can make it all run a bit smoother for your own well-being. So instead of fighting the stress, be curious and make it kind of fun research of like, what happens if I can do this instead of that? What happens if instead of yelling, I can go outside and just take 5 breaths? What happens if instead of feeling this anxiety and typing, I just get up and shake my whole body, because shaking releases a lot of energy as well. What happens? How can I really relate to the stress within my life in a very different way that will not kill my relationships? And may we all stay deeply connected to ourselves and those around us.